Hey there, my name is Dr. Kevin Davin, and today we're going to talk about digestion, the basics of digestion. Probably one of the most important talks that we do. It's in our core 12 talks that we teach. Reason for it is obviously we eat food every day. We all know what our digestive tract is, but many of us don't understand that we are slowly poisoning ourselves over and over and over again. If you look at Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, IBS, they're all on the rise, and they're very easy to figure out, and they're very easy to treat if we know what we're doing. So let's get into it. So what we will talk about today is, number one, what is digestion and how does it work? I want us to understand the basics of our digestive tract and what the whole purpose of digestion is, understand the body parts. Then we're going to get into what are we doing every day that we injure our digestive tract. Obviously, every day we're just putting poison into our body, and I want to take you step by step and show you what it's actually doing to our digestive tract. And finally, we're going to talk about how to reverse that. Healing takes time, but we've had people ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, IBS, all of these diseases, ulcers, acid reflux, they all get well if you do the right thing. So we'll get into it. Why is this important? Number one, your digestive tract is actually called your second brain. It's because it has so many nerves flooding the system. It actually has more nerves than any other body part with the exception of your brain. It's that important. And there's something called a gut-brain axis, meaning your brain affects the gut, but the gut also affects the brain. And we're aware of this, just like when you drink alcohol, right? It goes into your stomach, but what happens to your brain? It makes you behave differently. Well, think of that every time you put any kind of food into your system as well. So many of us get groggy, we get tired, we get sleepy, we get depressed, anxious. It's the foods that we're putting into our system that are causing that. It's an important area of the body. 80% of your immune system lives inside of your gut. And if you think about it, all the food you put in there or anything you put in there, your body has to make sure you're putting in nothing that's going to harm itself. So you have a lot of your immune system guarding the gate, if you will. And also, digestion takes up a lot of energy. So some people say up to 10% of your total energy is going into your digestion. So it's an important thing to talk about. And then finally, these are all the symptoms associated with a bad gut. Crohn's, IBS, ulcerative colitis, autism, depression, anxiety, acne, arthritis, autoimmune diseases, allergies, asthma. I mean, the list goes on and on, all caused by having a diseased gut. So the gut is one of the easiest things to heal. These things, all these symptoms and diseases associated with it, we don't have to live with it anymore. We just have to understand what's happening in the body. So let's start with this. What is the purpose of digestion? So we eat foods, right? We have breads, meats, eggs, fruits, vegetables. We have a whole variety of foods, but essentially we have what are called macronutrients. A macronutrient is something that we need to put a lot of in our body on a daily or weekly basis. And they pretty much all of these foods will break up into either carbohydrates, proteins, or fats. Okay? Now, what we end up doing in digestion, this is where digestion happens. We put this stuff in our bodies, and our bodies will break it down to the most simple level possible. So carbohydrates break up into something called glucose. Glucose is the simplest sugar that our body can use. Proteins will break up into something called amino acids, and fats will break up into fatty acids. And what they do in the body, so what glucose does in the body, that's our energy mostly. So all energy of your body, or most energy in your body, it comes from glucose and it turns into ATP. Glucose can also form receptors on your cells. So the receptors on cells, which are very important, are made out of glucose sometimes. Amino acids turn into hormones, enzymes. They build and repair your body. They make bones, muscles, hair, and nails. So pretty much when you're looking at a human being, what you're seeing are proteins. Proteins in action. And fatty acids, pretty much every cell wall is made up of fat. So the cell walls, the brain, it's insulation for your body. It stores toxicity. So these are what's happening. So we put food into our body in these forms. this is where digestion takes place. Digestion happens, it goes into your mouth, your stomach, your small intestine, large intestine, and the whole process is breaking these things down into really the simplest things possible before we can absorb it. So when we talk about digestion, let's talk about it from a big picture here. So digestion actually starts not in the stomach, it actually starts in this part of your body, your nose and your mouth. When food comes near you, when you smell it or when you taste it, you produce a certain saliva, and the saliva starts to break down all the carbohydrates. So up here are where the carbs are broken down. Excuse my bad handwriting here. This is where carbohydrates break down and start to break down. But also what happens is when you're tasting food, when you're smelling food, it sends an impulse to the brain, and the brain starts to communicate with the stomach and with the small intestine, with the large intestine, and it starts to tell everything what's coming in, what the pH of everything needs to be, and how to break down certain things that are about to come in. So after food enters into the stomach, things start to break down, it goes down the esophagus, and then finally it enters into the stomach. Stomach is where proteins start to break down, and it does it by using hydrochloric acid. So we'll have this really high acid. In humans it's about a 3 or 4 pH, which is pretty acidic, and it starts to break down the proteins that are sitting in your stomach. After that is done, the foods will move into the small intestine, and in the small intestine you'll get your bile release, you'll get things to break down your fats as well. But essentially in your small intestine is where most of things are going to get absorbed. This is where you're going to get your carbohydrates breaking down to the glucose, the finest level possible. You'll get your proteins breaking down to amino acids, and you'll get your fats breaking down to fatty acids. And a lot of them will get absorbed and go into the liver to process and to put throughout the rest of the body. If it doesn't, it'll keep being broken through. So for example, if you have a lot of fibery foods, or you'll have fruits, things like that, some of them will end up going into the large intestine. In the large intestine, this is where we have the most bacteria that actually will eat the fibrous foods we put in there and start to create some vitamins and some minerals, and we'll absorb that, but we'll also absorb a lot of water in this large intestine as well, and then eventually it'll make its way out. So the question is, how do we break down this food? The first thing that we do is we have the stomach, and in here we have hydrochloric acid. So I know we talked about it, but hydrochloric acid is very important. There's a big alkalinity kick, and I have no problem with that. When you get alkalinity in your body through fruits and vegetables, that's one thing. But a lot of people try to do very alkaline water, things like that. What ends up happening, or even antacids, things like that, what ends up happening is you dilute, or I'm sorry, you make the acid in here, you make it more alkaline, and as a result, it doesn't break down the proteins of the food as well. Proteins, things like that, that's where you get a lot of B vitamins from, which are very important for your nervous system and for a lot of processes in metabolism, so creating energy in your body. So we have a whole culture of people who take antacids, who start to make this hydrochloric acid more basic, more alkaline, and they're not going to digest their food very well at all. Same with like the alkaline water. You'll see people drinking like a 9.0 alkaline water. It's really not good for the body. What it'll end up doing is just making this very basic, and again, you won't digest food properly. The other thing to consider is you have a valve sitting right here that keeps the acid locked in. This is dependent on pH. So the more acidic, the tighter this valve squeezes. What happens is a lot of people start to dilute their acids. This starts to open up, and what you'll end up doing is getting a little hole in there, or the valve will open up, and it makes way for this acid to come through and come up into your esophagus, which we call acid reflux. They think their body is too acidic. They'll take an antacid or maybe Prilosec, something like that. It ends up making this even more alkaline and creating an even worse problem here. So again, we need this acid. We need it to be around a 3 or 4 pH. It's very important to break down food. We also have enzymes all throughout, which are different types of proteins all throughout our digestive tract to help break down the food. But finally, probably the most important thing is the bacteria that's found in our stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. Bacteria is extremely important. It is most of our immune system, and they do some very important things in our body. The bacteria inside of us, here I'll go to the next slide. You can see here they promote fat storage, promote angiogenesis, which is the production of new blood vessels. They train our immune system. In our digestive tract, extremely important. They're making vitamin K, vitamin B12. In fact, they've done studies on people who've had very low vitamin B12 levels, which creates pernicious anemia, so a type of anemia. And what they'll do is they'll just put somebody on a water fast. So they won't even add any foods to the person, but by fasting it promotes a healthy bacteria in the gut, and their B12 levels will actually come up. So it's pretty awesome. They'll metabolize medications that you're on, for example. They help the nervous system. They do everything. These are the things that are breaking down your food. So if you get rid of the bacteria, you don't break down food properly, then you're left with some problems, which we'll get into. One thing I want to note, inside is outside. What I mean by that is this: when you eat a piece of food, it is not inside of your body yet. What's happening is this: you have this tunnel. It's a hollow tunnel all the way through. If you follow this through, we're still not inside of the body. This goes all the way through you like a hollow tunnel. What I mean by that is this is actually inside of the body. So when you put food in you, it's not actually in you until it absorbs through the wall of the intestines and goes to the liver. If that doesn't happen, food doesn't get inside of you. So we have very important gatekeepers to make sure everything is okay. So how do we keep everything that's bad? So if you eat a piece of food and it's rancid, it's got bacteria, or it's got some kind of nasty chemical, our body doesn't want to put that in us. So the question is, how do we keep that out of us? So here's a really simple analogy. Let's say I'm a king, right, and I have my castle, and I don't want people to get into my castle. I have a couple defense mechanisms in place. I have a castle wall to keep everyone out, but I also have an army. So I have my knights that are there fighting things, keeping things out, and only allowing certain things in that we want. Your body is the exact same way. What you have is you have a mucus layer that acts as kind of like the castle wall, protecting everything. So if this is inside of your intestines and this is inside the body, and here, this is our castle wall protecting anything from coming in there. Okay, I hope that makes sense. The other thing that we have, our knights, are actually all the bacteria that we just talked about, and they're actually going to fight anything that's bad, and they're going to act as our immune system and as our first defense mechanism. What can happen though is this would be homeostasis. This would be something that's really healthy. So again, here's the mucus layer right here, both inner and outer mucus layer. These little green guys, this is our bacteria, this is our army protecting everything. But if you get too much of something coming in, and we're going to talk about what causes this, it can chip away at the cell wall, open this up, and then our castle wall is breached and things can get in. This is when we start to have some pretty bad toxicity in our body. So let's talk about that. Once the castle walls are stormed, we're in big time trouble. It takes a lot of time to heal after that. Almost all of us have this going on some form though, so we'll talk about what's causing that right now. The first thing that'll happen is we're going to eat foods and chemicals that kill the gut bacteria. Okay. A really good analogy is this: if you ever gone to a movie and you see all the seats taken like this, that's kind of what we want to see in our intestines. If we go to our intestines, we want to see all the bacteria filling up, all good bacteria, healthy bacteria, filling up all the space. Okay. Imagine if a couple people got up and left the movie. You'd have empty seats there. This makes way for bad bacteria to come in and take root. And they're going to save seats for their friends, and it's going to grow and grow and grow. So there are certain things that we're doing that are actually killing the good bacteria in our body. Antibiotics are obviously number one. Antibiotics don't differentiate, they kill all bacteria in your body. So when we take antibiotics, it takes us about 8 to 12 months to recover if we're following a good protocol. Meats have antibiotics pumped into them, as well as dairy. So even if we don't take any antibiotics, I haven't taken antibiotics probably since I was like an infant, but I was a meat eater for a while and I drank dairy, so even though I didn't take antibiotics, I was still killing the gut bacteria in my body. Alcohol can kill the bacteria, processed sugar, herbicides, pesticides, artificial sweeteners, and probably one of the biggest ones today is medicine. Okay, all medicine will kill the good bacteria in your body. So if you take a look at this list and you look at the standard American diet, which has a lot of meat in it, a ton of processed sugar, most people drink alcohol a few times a week, herbicides, pesticides on all our fruits and vegetables if you don't buy organic, artificial sweeteners people use all the time, and then the average person in their 70s is on 13 prescription medicines today. So what kind of bacteria do we have going on in our body? The result of killing the good bacteria makes room for the dangerous bacteria like we talked about. The other thing is this, that bacteria is what allows us to absorb and open up B vitamins and also vitamin K. So if we kill this bacteria, you can take all the supplements you want, you can eat all the foods you want, healthy foods. You're not going to take in your B vitamins or your vitamin K. Also, you're going to have a decreased immunity, your immune system's going to suffer, and then finally, you're going to have undigested food particles inside of your gut. Okay? This will lead to constipation, which will lead to some nasty problems in the future. Again, boom, this is what we're doing. So that was number one. The second thing that we do to cause gut disease is we eat foods that are acidic to the body. Now again, when I talk about this, I don't mean things that are acidic. What I mean is when we eat certain foods, they cause an acidic reaction inside of our body, which can create some big problems. Number one is, remember, we have our enzymes that are helping us break down food. They usually run pretty well in an alkaline environment. When we start creating acidic environments, they turn these enzymes off, so we won't break down food properly. And then number two, it can start to puncture that mucus wall like we talked about. So that mucus is our castle wall protecting us. When we have all that acid coming in, our body will have to increase mucus production at first as a result. Here's the problem with that. That mucus is actually a very good place for parasites, viruses, and bad bacteria to live. So when you have all this acidic food coming in, it starts to poke holes in our cell walls, or in our castle wall, or in the mucus. So your body has to increase the mucus production to protect the intestinal wall. And then what happens is it just creates this awesome environment for parasites to live in. A lot of us have parasites we don't even know about. As the mucus increases around the intestines, it'll also reduce the absorption of nutrients. So you can see how where this is starting to go. So here are some common foods that cause acidity in the body. Meats, dairy, eggs are a huge one, sugar, alcohol, and medicine. The list is starting to look pretty familiar, isn't it? It's getting pretty easy to understand what's causing all of this stuff. Finally, third thing that happens is a leaky gut is produced. So let's go over this. This is our small intestine, for example. You can see how big this opening is that all the food has to go through. Well, as we've talked about already, we're killing all the good bacteria. We're eating foods that are causing acidity to the body, and it's breaking down the mucus lining, so the body has to produce more mucus as a result of that. But in both cases, what's happening is food is not becoming digested. And as a result of that, this hole will start to close in and get tighter and tighter and tighter, so the body won't be able to absorb as many nutrients. But what will also happen is this will start to balloon out. So you may have seen people like this before, with their huge bellies sticking out. This is not somebody who has just fat. I mean, their intestines are just totally bloated. I mean, it's kind of gross when you think about it. But think about a balloon that you're blowing up and opening up. That's what's happening. As there's food sits in here, it's undigested, it's not moving through you well at all. What ends up happening is you get some things called mucoid plaques that form, just encrusted fecal matter. It lines the walls of your bowels. It's a gross process that happens, and it happens more often than not to most people. As a result of that, something called leaky gut will happen. And leaky gut is very simple. Remember that balloon analogy? That balloon starts to swell out and open up. The same thing will happen. It'll create an opening between the intestinal wall, just like in here. And what happens is all that bad bacteria, all toxicity, undigested food particles will actually flow into your bloodstream. So stuff that should never get into your blood will now flow into your bloodstream. Bad stuff will happen. Essentially, what'll happen is poisoned blood. You'll have blood that is poisonous. You'll have blood that now has mucus, pus, parasites, nasty bacteria floating around, causing a world of trouble. This is what causes all those diseases that we showed earlier. On a side note, I just want to talk about the nervous system and gut health as well. Your nervous system is extremely important for your gut to work. You can see up here is where your brainstem is. It's where your atlas is, like we talked about in previous videos. But you have a nerve here called your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve, if I trace it out, it's what slows down the heart. It's what gives you nice deep breaths and slows down your respiration. But you can see it also is what comes to your digestive tract. And your vagus nerve is what's responsible for churning your stomach and your small intestines and making the intestines squeeze food all the way through it. So when you have a subluxation, and here's a blown up version of that. When you have a subluxation, it puts pressure on this vagus nerve. It stops this activity from happening, and it slows down your digestion. So instead of having 2 to 3 bowel movements a day, some people will have 1 a day, some people will have 1 every other day, some people will have 1 a week. And as a result, food just sits there. All this toxicity sits in your gut, and it just gets absorbed into into that leaky gut. Pretty much you're just sitting there with poison in your body, and you're just having it drip into your bloodstream all day long. So that's the importance of getting adjusted. I've had people who for literally 30 years go once a week. You get them adjusted, return a healthy nervous system to their digestive tract again, and boom, they're going like clockwork 2 times a day, literally within a couple weeks. And that's what we want to see. So let's talk about how to get the gut well. First one thing to understand is that all healing takes time. Many of us have had a bad gut for 20, 30, maybe 40 years of eating bad, creating this toxic sludge that sits in our gut. So we have to understand that, okay, this is not going to go away overnight. This is going to take maybe a couple of years to fully reverse, okay? But some things that we can do here: number 1, reduce medicines. Number 2, we're going to eat foods that are healing to the body, things that are going to push all that toxicity through us and feed the bacteria. Fruits are by far the best thing you can eat for it. We'll get to number 3 in a second. Vegetables are extremely important. They have a very high mineral content, but these are the things and teas that are very alkalizing to the body. You're going to put them in. They're going to cause a tremendous amount of healing to your intestines. They have a lot of fiber to them. They're going to cause a lot of healing. Also seeds as well. So if we look at a food pyramid, really our main source of nutrition every day should come from fruits and vegetables, seeds, and teas. This should be what we're eating 80% of the time. You know, I'm all for having a cheat day, having, you know, a couple meals here and there that aren't the best. I understand that, living in moderation. But when you look at our diet, cereals, eggs, pastas, rice, bread, sandwiches, meats, I mean, that's where our diet is, not fruits and vegetables. So it's really encouraging people, hey, eat fruits, eat vegetables, eat seeds, drink your teas. This is what's going to start to heal your body over time. And then let's talk about fasting. Fasting is probably the best thing you can do to heal your gut. When you fast, you are totally giving your body a break to start breaking stuff down. It increases your growth hormone. It allows your body to get rid of all that gunk inside of you. Again, it increases the motility of your small and large intestine. There's nothing better than fasting for your health. Again, you want to do it safely. If you've never fasted before, it can be kind of dangerous if you go all in. You have to go slow at first, but it's very important to fast consistently. And then finally, upper cervical care, getting the nervous system back on track so that the brain can talk to the gut as well as possible and get the muscles of the gut to really start to push things through it. It's very important. In our first video, we talk about our Pure Life protocol. This is how we do it. It's pretty much small fasting over time. If you want to pause this and take a look at our protocol, you're more than welcome to look at it. Pretty much it consists of fasting every day till 12, fasting 1 day a week, fasting 3 days a month, eating lots of fruit in the process of it. So, and obviously reducing all of the meat, dairy, eggs, processed sugar, white breads, anything that's white, and alcohol as much as possible in the process. Okay? You do this over time, your gut starts to heal up. Crohn's disease goes away, ulcerative colitis goes away. All those diseases in the first slide we talked about will go away over time. But you have to be consistent with this. In the beginning, it's going to feel bad. If you're not used to eating healthy, you might have some big reactions, some inflammatory reactions in the body. You need to stay steady with it and understand that's going to happen. But over time, you're going to get well. Okay? Remember, your body was created to coincide with nature. Live according to the laws of nature and expect health. What I mean by that is this. The fruits and vegetables that are here that are grown on the planet are what we're meant to eat. When we live a life of eating processed garbage, we have to pay a consequence to that. So understand, natural foods are what we're supposed to be eating. Fruits and vegetables are what humans are designed to eat. If we stick to that, there is no reason we do not heal up. Again, my name is Dr. Kevin Davin with Pure Life Health Centers. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, here's our phone number. There's our email. If you are new to this and you want to come in for a consultation and exam, we offer free ones to anyone who is new. So please give us a call. We would love to help. Other than that, I wish you all the best of luck. Love you all.